Hello, today we're going to talk about variations in consciousness. Consciousness, or our awareness of internal or external stimuli, including events, internal sensations, and thoughts, is constantly changing. This was recognized in 1902 by William James when he discussed the stream of consciousness and endless flow of ideas. Sigmund Freud was also interested in consciousness, and particularly in what was going on just below the surface of the stream. He was one of the first theorists to recognize that consciousness is not all or none phenomenon, but rather that there are levels of awareness. Sleep and dreaming researchers have also shown that awareness is different during sleep and dreaming, but mental processes occur that are quite similar to waking thought and are surprisingly sophisticated. The EEG is an instrument used to measure brain electrical activity, and we explored that in previous chapters. And in this particular case, we're looking at brain waves across large areas of the cerebral cortex. It's basically a psychological index of consciousness. Brainwave activity is divided into 4 different bands: the beta waves, which are correlated with alertness and problem solving; alpha waves, which are correlated with resting and relaxation; theta waves, which are correlated with low alertness and sleep; and delta waves, which are correlated with deep dreamless sleep. Humans and other animals operate on a 24-hour biological cycle, and these cycles are particularly important in the regulation of sleep, but also in the regulation of temperature, blood production, hormone production, and other bodily processes. Circadian rhythms vary from person to person, and different people have different optimal times to fall asleep and have good night's sleep. The pathway for regulation of the human biological clock appears to be based in light levels, which go from the eye to an area in the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is in the hypothalamus. And this nucleus tells the pineal gland to secrete melatonin, a hormone that adjusts biological clocks. Melatonin supplements are sold in the US as a nutritional supplements, but many researchers worry that people are taking too high doses of the substance, and when long-term effects have not been tested. Melatonin is a regulated drug in Canada, Great Britain, and many other countries, and research shows that it may be helpful in the treatment of jet lag, but timing is very important and hard to get right. Studies also show that melatonin may be useful as a mild sedative, more so in the daytime than at night when melatonin levels are naturally higher. But ignoring circadian rhythms from jet lag can result in inferior sleep that can last several days, and shift work can also result in less sleep than an inferior sleep as well. Insomnia and other psychological problems, as well as increasing accidents, are the consequences of a loss of sleep. Melatonin and exposure to high light, bright light has been used in some success to counter the effects of going off circadian rhythms. But again, researchers are very concerned about whether or not using melatonin long-term can have effect on our body's natural ability to produce melatonin and regulate sleep. And so that is something that we'll learn more about as long-term studies progress. Psychologists who conduct sleep research use the following instruments a great deal. The electroencephalograph, which records electrical brain activity; the EMG, or the electromyograph, that records muscle activity; the EOG, or the electrocolograph, which records eye movements, and there are other bodily functions that are observed as well, such as heart rate, breathing rate, temperature, as well as videotaping a person sleeping through a window. Believe it or not, people get used to the wires and cameras even after one night and can easily fall into their regular sleep or dysleep patterns, even with all these wires and cameras. Sleep researchers have discovered 5 distinctively different sleep stages based on psychological recordings. Stage 1 is a brief transitional stage of light sleep that lasts between 1 and 7 minutes. And the EEG moves from predominantly alpha waves when the person is just about to fall asleep to more theta activity. Hypnic jerks, those brief muscle contractions that occur just when one is falling asleep, occur in stage 1 of sleep. Stage 2 is characterized by more fixed brainwave activity and brief bursts of higher frequency brainwaves called sleep spindles. Stage 3 and 4 are characterized by low frequency delta waves. It takes about 30 minutes to reach stage 4, and usually people stay there for about 30 minutes, and then the cycle reverses. When stage 1 should be next in line for the cycle, something really interesting happens, and rapid eye movement, or REM sleep, begins. REM sleep was accidentally discovered by Nathaniel Kleitman in the spring of 1952. REM sleep is characterized by an EEG that looks awake and alert, and by rapidly moving eyes behind the lids, an irregular pulse and breathing rate, and loss of muscle tone. When someone is awakened from REM sleep, they report vivid dreaming. Infants spend much more time in REM than do adults. During adulthood, sleep changes continually, and with the percentage of slow wave sleep declining and the percentage of time spent in stage 1 increasing. Most cultures show little difference in sleep times. However, napping occurs more frequently in siesta cultures, in tropical regions, and places with slower pace of life. The brain structures that are most involved in sleep appear to be the ascending reticular activating system. And this is a system of afferent fibers running through the reticular formation that influence psychological arousal. When these fibers are cut, animals will sleep continuously. If they are stimulated, arousal and alertness result. Other brain structures are also involved in sleep, such as the pons, which is critical in the generation of REM sleep, the medulla, the thalamus, the hypothalamus, and the limbic system. The neurotransmitters that appear to be most influential in the sleep cycle, or sleeping in general, are acetylcholine, serotonin, and although norepinephrine and dopamine and GABA are also involved in arousal and in the course of sleep. So basically, there is no one center or chemical that is at work. Sleep is rather an interplay of many neural centers and neurotransmitters. Sleep is likely very adaptive, as both birds and animals evolved the behavior independently. However, exactly why we sleep, it's not known. There are 3 main hypotheses regarding the evolutionary significance of sleep: to conserve energy, to be immobilized and therefore to be out of danger, and to restore energy and other resources used during the waking hours. Evidence is strongest for the energy and conservation hypothesis, but the issue is still hotly debated. Sleep deprivation studies indicate that people can function surprisingly well when sleep deprived, although effects on mood and performance are present, but these are modest. Effects would be more severe, except most people have a hard time going without sleep for more than 3 or 4 days at a maximum. So, sleep restriction or partial deprivation occurs when people make do with less sleep than normal. And this is very common and can cause some negative effects, and particularly in performance with long-lasting effects, difficulty, and monotonous tasks, which can be very, very costly. 3 Mile Island, for example, Chernobyl, and other issues such as the Exxon Valdez were all ecological disasters caused in part by sleep-deprived workers. when researchers wake subjects up whenever they go into REM sleep, thus depriving them of this one particular stage, they find that soon that person will try to go back into REM sleep faster. Pretty soon, the researchers have to wake them up almost constantly. The increasing frequency of movement into REM within the sleep cycle is termed REM rebound, and it suggests that the body, for some reasons, needs REM, and that some rebound effects have been found for slow wave sleep. Sleep loss has been associated with less emotional control, more amygdala-driven processing, increased hunger, lower immune system function, and increased inflammatory response. Sleep disorders are quite varied. The most common, however, is insomnia. Insomnia occurs in 3 different patterns: trouble falling asleep, trouble remaining asleep, and persistent early morning waking. Difficulty falling asleep is most common among young people, while early morning awaking and trouble staying asleep are more common among middle-aged and elderly people. Estimates of the prevalence of insomnia vary, but it appears that about 34 to 35% of adults report problems with insomnia, and about 15 to 17% have severe or frequent insomnia. The prevalence increases with age and is 50% more in men than in women. Some people think they have insomnia when they really have sound patterns of sleep, which is called a pseudo-insomnia or sleep state misperception. Narcolepsy is marked by sudden and irresistible onsets of sleep during normal waking hours. Interestingly, the person with narcolepsy goes directly into REM sleep. Sleep apnea involves frequent reflexive gasping for air that periodically occur. Waking the person who has it with sleep apnea, the person stops breathing for 15 to 60 seconds, which can cause heart and lung damage. Nightmares usually occur in REM sleep and are anxiety-arousing dreams. Night terrors are associated with non-REM sleep and are characterized by intense autonomic arousal and feelings of panic. The disorder is more common in children and not indicative of emotional disturbance. It has been suggested that a great deal of insomnia may be a result of hyperarousal or physical characteristics like heart rate, temperature, EEG, and metabolic activation. REM sleep behavior disorders is characterized by not having sleep paralysis during the REM stage, and therefore one acts out their dreams. The most common approach in the pharmacological treatment of insomnia is the prescription of 2 classes of drugs, though benzodiazepine sedatives such as Dalamine, Halcion, and Restoril, which were originally developed to relieve anxiety, and a newer non-benzodiazepine sedatives called the Ambien, Sonata, and Lanesta, which are designed primarily for sleep problems. These sedatives can be problematic in a long-range solution for insomnia, and for a number of reasons are problematic in terms of overdose. Use of medication carry effects for people who might be sluggish during the day, being certainly less problematic than overdose, and common use gradually these drugs become less effective, and then we get into this really vicious cycle of an escalating dependency as depicted here, where people suffer from insomnia, start taking pills, begin to feel dependent on sedatives to fall asleep. They begin to use sleep medication regularly, they develop tolerance to these pills and begin to lose their effectiveness, which then we see an increased dose, which develops a tolerance to higher doses, and these increased doses lead to dependency on the drug. Different sleep problems tend to occur at different points in the sleep cycle. Look here at figure 5.11, and we can see sleepwalking tend to occur in the slow wave sleep, and disturbances due to REM sleep behavior disorder obviously occur during REM or REM periods, and routine nightmares are also associated with heightened dream activity in REM sleep. Dreams are conventionally defined as mental experiences during sleep, and in particular REM sleep, that are often based in vivid imagery, have story-like quality, are often bizarre, and seem real to the dreamer. Many recent theorists, however, have questioned almost every aspect of this definition. We know that people dream in non-REM too. And although the dreams are less story-like and vivid in imagery than in the REM dreaming stage. Also recently, research show that content is usually not bizarre and that dreamers are often aware that they are dreaming. Thus, the scientific conceptualization of dreaming is changing. Research is showing us that the content of dreams is usually familiar, and common themes in dreams include things like falling, being pursued, trying repeatedly to do something, school, sex, being late, eating, and being frightened. Children's dreams appear to differ from those of adults, with preschool children reporting bland images with no storylines when awoken from REM sleep. If they recall dreaming at all, children under the age of 9 through 11 report dreaming only 20 or 30% of the time when awoken from REM sleep, as opposed to adults 80% of the time. Between 5 and 8, children begin to report dream narratives, but these are not well developed, and adults' dreams develop around 11 to 13, suggesting that dreaming is cognitive ability that develops gradually. Freud said that dreams, contents of waking life tend to spill into dreams, and he called this day residue. Lucid dreams are dreams in which the dreamer is conscious and aware that they are dreaming while they are asleep and in the midst of a vivid dream. People in Western culture pay little attention to dreams as meaningful messages in their lives, while people from many other non-Western cultures are likely to view dreams as important information about themselves, the future, or their spiritual world. Hypnosis is a systematic procedure that increases a heightened state of suggestibility as well as relaxation, narrowed attention, and enhanced fantasy. People differ in how easily they can be hypnotized, and this is termed the hypnotic susceptibility. 10% of people are easily hypnotized, and 10% of people are very difficult to hypnotize. Hypnotic susceptibility can be reliably measured with the Stanford Hypnotic Susceptibility Scale. Susceptibility is linked to higher levels of absorption in a task and in a person's imaginativeness. It's greatly dependent on expectations. Research shows that people who are highly susceptible to hypnosis are just as responsive to suggestion without being hypnotized. Kirsch and Braffin in 1999 call this imaginative susceptibility and argue that future research should focus on this broader trait. Phenomenon that can be produced through hypnosis are many, including experience such as anesthesia during medical or dental procedures, hallucinations, seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, or smelling something that is not there, disinhibition, doing things that you normally wouldn't do in public, like taking off your clothes, and post-hypnotic suggestion and amnesia, influences of suggestion made during the hypnosis session on subjects' later behavior. You'll remember nothing that occurred during the hypnotized state. Researchers argue about whether hypnosis is really an altered state of awareness, or if it's simply just people being or doing what they think they're supposed to do when they're being hypnotized. The disassociation hypnosis holds that hypnosis splits consciousness into two streams, divided consciousness. Meditation is an ancient discipline which has recently become an area of growing interest. Some of the most widely practiced forms of meditation are listed here. All three of these are rooted in Eastern religions. However, many who meditate do separately from religious practice. Effects of meditation include decreased heart rate, respiration rate, and a relaxed EEG with predominant theta and alpha rhythm patterns. And new research using the CT scan to track blood flow to the brain in the experienced Tibetan Buddhist meditators show that high activity in the prefrontal cortex, an area important for focused attention, and low activity in parts of the parietal lobe that are known for process information about the body's location in space. And this may explain some of the transcendent experience reported by many meditators. Meditation results in a potentially beneficial psychological state whereby body arousal is suppressed, and it is unclear how meditation differs from other systematic relaxation training procedures which produce very similar effects. The final area that we will explore in this area of consciousness is altering consciousness with drugs. Psychoactive drugs modify mental, emotional, and behavioral functioning, and recreational drug use results in pleasurable alterations in consciousness. The 6 categories of drugs listed on this slide are frequently used recreationally. Narcotics include heroin, morphine, codeine, Demerol, and methadone, and high doses can produce an overwhelming sense of euphoria or a who cares quality. Sedatives, which are sleep-inducing, include barbiturates, downers used in higher doses that are prescribed for medical purposes. Stimulants include mild drugs such as caffeine and nicotine, as well as much stronger drugs such as cocaine and amphetamines. Cocaine and amphetamines have similar effects, except amphetamines last longer. The euphoria created by these drugs is very different from a who cares, very relaxed state. It's more like a I can conquer the world, very alert state of being. Hallucinogens such as LSD, mescaline, and psilocybin have similar effects, including producing euphoria, increasing sensory awareness, and distorting sense of time. These experiences may be pleasant, but they can also produce nightmarish feelings of anxiety and paranoia, a bad trip. Cannabis is the hemp plant which marijuana, hashish, and THC are derived. THC is the active chemical ingredient, causes a mild, relaxed euphoria, and enhanced sensory awareness, and unintended effects can be anxiety, sluggish mental functioning, and memory impairment. New research shows that long-term marijuana use can impair some aspects of cognitive functioning, even when users are no longer high. Alcohol is the most widely used psychoactive drug. When people drink heavily, the effect is a relaxed euphoria that temporarily boosts self-esteem and decreases inhibitions. MDMA, or ecstasy, is a compound drug related to both amphetamines and hallucinogens that became popular in the 1990s at raves and in dance clubs. And research shows that ecstasy may have long-term cognitive and emotional effects, but more research is needed.